Welcome to the Shower Doctor's live stream on pumps. We're in what we usually use as a studio for doing our sort of help videos, but we've got so many pumps that I really needed a bit more space than doing this from behind the desk. So if you like what we're doing, just give us a thumbs up, and we'll get on with trying to explain a little bit about the different types of pumps and how they work. This is not meant to be in any way in depth, but it should give you a good idea of what the different pumps are for and what they do. So I guess probably, you can also send us a text on live chat or whatever, and I'll answer these as we go along. So probably what we'll do is start kind of at the bottom end of the pumps and move our way up to the bigger pumps, and then I'll explain really how the two main pumps work. So first of all, we have this kind of thing here, which is just a pump with an ordinary shower with a hot and cold going in, and what this does is it just boosts the pressure a little bit inside. Fairly normal little pump. This motor is used extensively in some of the other pumps that have for an electric shower and that kind of thing. So a fairly normal little motor, and then we go on to this kind of thing, which is really regarded as a shower pump, but this has been cut away so I can pretty much show you what all the bits are for, and all of the other pumps really have the same kind of parts inside them. So they've always got a circuit board mounted, usually on the top, sometimes on the side, but usually on the top, for just to do the electronics of the pump. Inside, they've got the motor very similar to the motor in the first shower I showed you, and at the end, the actual pump with the elements inside here and the impeller that drives the pressure and builds up the pressure in the water. So that's the basic structure of the pump. This is very much a shower pump, really, for only using on showers. And then we move on to this kind of pump. Now this is sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. So I should have gone to this pump first. This is a regenerative pump. So the water comes in here, gets twirled around and gets blasted out the other end. Once again, a fairly small pump, and really does a job. It would probably do a shower, and maybe it might do a bathroom, but you kind of be pushing it for that. So this is a regen pump. And then we come to this type of pump here, which I should have got started with first, which is centrifugal. So the water comes in here, it gets spun round and gets forced out the outlets. I'm going to explain a little bit about how the regenerative and the centrifugal pump works in a few minutes. So these are the kind of smaller pumps, and then we get to these are basically plastic pumps as well. We then get to this kind of thing, a brass pump. This is much more heavy duty. This is, I think it's a 2-bar pump. Just wait a minute. Or is it 2.5? It's really immaterial, but no, this is a 3-bar pump. So this is a 3-bar pump, so a fairly powerful pump made of brass. Now, whether they're made of brass or plastic, the actual pump, is pretty much up to yourself if you're buying the pump. There's not a huge amount of difference. The plastics now are so good that it's not necessary to think. In the past, brass pumps were always better. That is not necessarily the case anymore. So this is a regenerative brass pump. And then finally, we get to this kind of thing, which looks a bit of a brute, but it's the same sort of thing. It has the circuit board on the top, the pumps at either end, but this has a pressure vessel on it, and this is now called a universal pump. They were in the past called either negative and positive. The pumps were either negative and positive head, but this is universal. They can use in either negative or positive head situations. So it's I'm just going to try and explain how this works. So what happens is the water comes in, as with all the pumps, the water comes in, and as soon as you open the tap, there's a sensor that senses the water flowing through it. When the water flows through, the sensor then switches the power on, and the power comes on and boosts the water pressure. And that's how all of these pumps work. Whenever the water starts to flow, it senses the flow and turns the power on and boosts the pressure. This is slightly different in that this has got a pressure vessel on it. So what happens is when you turn the water on, that the pressure in this vessel drops, and there's a sensor inside the circuit board that senses the pressure's gone. When the pressure goes from this, it switches the pump on. Now the pump will run and run using the flow switches the same as the other pumps until you turn the tap off. So when you turn your tap or shower off, the pump will run on and it keeps running until it builds up the pressure in this vessel. When the pressure comes up, the pump stops running, and that's how basically it works. Some of the other ones have two smaller vessels, one in the hot and one in the cold. The latest ones are now mounting the pressure vessel down on the side here. They say it takes up less room, but it's always the same. Turn the tap on, senses the flow. The flow drops whenever the pressure drops in the pressure vessel. It senses that, the pump starts to run and it will keep running. Turn the tap off and it builds up the pressure again, and once it senses the pressure is fully up, then the pump shuts off. But I think what we really need to do now is discuss the two normal methods for a pump to work. So what we'll do is just put this to the side, and we'll get this is a regenerative pump. So what happens is the water comes in, and then we have this, the impeller. I think Lucas, if you can't focus, if I'm too far away, Lucas is going to afterwards try and put some pictures, clip some pictures to the edited highlights of this. But this is the impeller, and it fits in here. And what happens is, as the water goes in, it spins and it grabs, and I think in this case it would be the other way around, it grabs just a tiny little bit of water, spins it round, and the force of it spinning it round shoots it back up and out the other side. It's a fairly, it's fairly normal. It just does this at high speed, and you can see all the little veins and all the little bits of water that get caught in here, and the speed this spins at, the centrifugal force throws it up and out of the top of the pump. The one issue with this, these are fairly sturdy centrifugal pumps, regenerative pumps are fairly sturdy, but they tend to be a little bit more noisy than the regen pumps. So there we go, it just grabs the water, spins it round and throws it out the other side. Now we'll go to the regenerative pumps. Just to pop this one out of the way. And here we go, regen pump. So what happens here is the water goes in the centre this time, it gets spun round and gets thrown out the outlet pipe. Once again, it's a fairly simple thing, but this tends to be quieter, although if there's air getting into the system, these are much more sensitive to, to a bit of abuse than a regen pump. And to explain how this works, what I've got in here is the kind of components that are inside this. So what would happen with this is that the water would enter the centre here and go in, as this is spinning, go in through the hole, but as it spins, what it's doing is inside is it's grabbing a little bit of water and throwing it out to the outside edge of the pump, and as it comes round it gets thrown out the outlet tube. But I guess what you're not seeing is the inside of this impeller, which is different to the other one. And so this is what happens inside the impeller. As it goes spinning round, what it's doing is grabbing the water and throwing it to the outside. So it's a much quieter way to use the pump. And it's, as you can see, the bits fit together like this, and you can have multiple elements on these throwing the water further and further on to create more and more pressure. But effectively, the water goes in the middle, and because of these veins inside, it gets thrown to the outside edge, and that's what creates the pressure in this type of pump. And I think that without going into much more detail, that's really the basics of how all of these pumps work. The pressure involved when you're looking at a pump is, just in case you don't know, that pressure comes from the height of the water above the appliance. So for example, if you've got a reservoir or a water tank that's well above the top of your tap or your shower, you've got much more pressure. When you get to the situation where you've not got much difference in height between the reservoir or your water tank and your tap or your shower, there's very little pressure. And in some cases these days, with the sort of newer flats and these kind of things, that actually come with a pump already supplied. But if you're having problems with pressure, then you need you need to put a pump in. If you really need any more details about what you want, then drop us an email. We'll do our best to answer any kind of technical questions, or indeed you can have a go at the live chat right now and ask us some questions. I'll do my best to answer them. We're here until about 1:30, so I'll answer anything I can as we go along. At the present moment, there's
Check the chat.
check. Sorry. There's supposed to be one. Send us any. I've got Lucas outside chat telling me that I should check. Where am I to check, Lucas?
The chat.
I've got nothing coming up on my screen. I'll let Lucas carry on with that at the moment, because I've got nothing coming up on my screen at the moment. Can I do a refresh? Can I refresh this, Lucas? Where?
Right click.
Oh, right click. Okay, I think we've had a slight technical difficulty here, because I really prefer to answer the questions. I've got one or two questions that I have from that other people have sent in recently I can answer, but let's try this again. This screen, sign into chat, hang on a minute, it might be here. I think I may have messed this up. So yeah, so this is the problem with doing things live. Probably what I'll do is I'll maybe turn the laptop round and get Lucas to have a look at it, see if he can get this to come. In the meantime, oh hang on, this is it. This is what happens when you do things live. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'll look at, we had some questions that have come in over the last 2 or 3 weeks just about other subjects, and my intention was to run through some of these. My intention was also to make sure that I was going to do these after the pumps, but well, when things go wrong, you just got to get on with it. And so probably what I'll look at is the first one is from Sandy M. And I'll read it out. I have a Myra Advanced ATL thermostatic shower. The light comes on when the cord is pulled, but both the water pressure button and the on-off button light up blue. The on-off button flashes and the warning lights for the water pressure and reset do not light up. I have tried resetting the shower, but nothing works. There is obviously electricity getting to the shower, and then the water is running to the property. Have I any ideas? Well, yeah, I guess I have. The problem I think you have is you clearly got electricity going to the shower, but I suspect that you may not be getting 240 volts to it. It's quite common because obviously all the neons are lighting up, but whenever you try to actually draw some power, the power supply is failing. So it may be you've got a faulty switch, the on-off switch, the isolation switch. It often goes wrong there. Often what happens inside the isolation switch is the neutral burns out, and so there's enough in the circuit to power up neons and that kind of thing, but there's not enough to actually power the shower, so the shower itself will not switch on, although it lights up. So you need to check that you're actually, when the shower's getting switched on, you're actually getting 240 volts going to. You may find if you put the tester in, it tests 240 volts, switch the shower on, and all of a sudden the power will just drop. So try that. That's the first thing to maybe have a go at. And so at last we've got our one of our questions on the live chat. So I'll read this out. It's from Street Sounds Electro. Hi Sherlock. You helped me fix my PRD. My problem is the shower head on one of the Aspiranti ranges, which is one of the Tritons. I dismantled the head, and as it was clogged, but I have a little bit of plastic, a hexagon piece put up there. I have a bit. It was clogged up. It was clogged up a bit, but have a little plastic piece, hexagon in it. I'm not really sure what the question is. If it's on an Aspiranti, that some of the manufacturers are on the inlets, they're putting restrictors in the inlets that restrict the flow in the inlet. I don't suspect that's what it is. It may be that it's one of the shower heads that's got multiple multiple spray patterns. And so the only thing I can think of is that that one of the parts for the spray pattern has jumped out of place. It's not uncommon because most people tend to buy, a 5-mode head, and then the reality is that they get the mode they prefer and it probably never moves from there. This may be what Street Sounds has done, is he's decided to check it, clean it, and then it's one of the bits that fall off, because not all of them are very sturdy inside. But I'm sorry, Street Sounds, I'm really not exactly sure what this is about, but anyway, it may just be one of the parts if it's a multi-mode shower head. So there we go. As there's no other questions at the moment, what I'll do is I'll go back to some of the questions that people have asked over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've got Charlton Power. Any advice on a shower that has completely got no power switch not showing any power? Well, this is kind of the same as the last one. Basically the isolating switch for the shower has probably burnt out inside. So what you can get is, the one way to notice it is the neon light that's on your isolating switch. When you switch on, if the neon's lit, and whenever you switch on the neon goes out, then it's probably the isolating switch that needs replaced. Just check that you've got the right size isolating switch in. That it should be a 45 amp or a 50 amp isolating switch. I have seen showers put in fitted with switches that are a lot less, that take I think 15 or 20 amps, and they burn out fairly quickly. So when you're replacing it, make sure you get one that's got the correct rating for your shower. And you're going to have to excuse my pronunciation here. Puje Java. Hi. If I on my heater always very hot, it's always very hot and become very hot, what is the problem? From that I never use the heater, for that I ever use the heater anymore, right? So I think there is some language difficulty here, as much with Pugy as with myself. However, I think that what he's saying is that the shower is constantly hot, and in fact it's so hot now you can't use it. That the things that normally would cause that, or the easiest things to check first, is to make sure that you check that the valve that's coming into the house is fully open, and then there should be a valve in the line to the shower. Make sure that's fully open. Sometimes people turn some of the valves down because the pressure in their sink tap is too great, and so they would want to turn the tap down a bit to bring the pressure down. And what happens, of course, is the shower needs the full pressure, and that's it. You don't mention what type of shower it is, so I'm presuming it's an electric shower you've got the problem with. And the other thing you could look at, if all these valves are fully open and you've got enough pressure coming into the house, you need a minimum of 1 bar for an electric shower. If you've got enough pressure coming into the house, then it could be the valve inside the shower itself that regulates the flow. That's the other thing that can cause the shower to run too hot. And the next one is Gambler. He is a Triton Aquatronic 3 Plus, and it is leaking water from the thermal cutout that is located at the bottom of the heater tank. The bottom TCO is connected with 2 blue wires. The TCO costs around £20. Do I need to buy a new shower? Well, no, not really. It's really unusual for one of these TCOs to leak, because it's just held in with a static neoprene O-ring. So just check that the leak is actually coming from there. It's not impossible. I have seen a long time ago one of these leaking. Really what happened is that the 2 blue wires that are connected to it hadn't been crimped on properly. The thing had overheated and not melted, but it distorted, and the water started coming out through that. So I think with the Aquatronic 3 that comes as an outlet pipe with the TCO and the wires already wired in. You can just check on our website and see see if that's the case. But it's probably worth repairing, because the shower itself will be okay. Just a faulty TCO, and these TCOs, I've seen a few of them have burn out, but not many of them leak. So hope this information is useful to you, because we're kind of moving away from pumps at the moment, and no extra live chat questions about pumps, but I'll carry on with these. If you like all this, give us a thumbs up. So here's Jason L. is a plastic or a copper heating element, the tank, the heating tank, he means safer if the heater is faulty, to prevent electrocution when the heater is faulty. Well, so what he's really asking is, I think here, is that the heating tanks inside a shower are really generally plastic or copper. They're becoming more and more plastic because, just like the pumps, the technology in terms of the plastic is improving every year. And Jason sent a few questions in, but really this one's the one that's the crux of the matter. Will you get electrocuted if you have a plastic or a copper heating tank in a shower? The short answer is no, or maybe I should clarify that, as I've never heard of anybody, and doing this for, plumber for 40 odd years, and I've been doing this for 20 odd years, so I've never heard of this happening. Usually what happens, if the element burns out inside of the tank, whether it's copper or plastic, that two things will happen, or two or three things will happen. It'll either trip the MCB, the miniature circuit breaker, or the RCD, or if it does go, it should, in theory, I suppose, run to earth. What has happened is that if an element breaks down inside the tank, it usually goes off with a big bang, and you'll jump out of the shower. You will not get electrocuted, or at least not to my knowledge anybody's get electrocuted. But if the element goes, they tend to go with a bang, and it will make you jump. So I don't think there's any problems there, Jason. Now we've got one from Dan the Man, and he says, thanks very much for your well articulated videos. Well, the way I'm mincing my words this morning, I don't know if that's entirely correct. Well articulated videos in the Myra XL model. You are like the Penn and Teller of the plumbing world. Well, disclosing all their trade secrets. Well, they're not really trade secrets, they're just things that I've picked up over the years. But they're also useful for plumbers. I mean, I guess that in terms of DIY, that a lot of people will look at these videos for DIY, but I'm hoping that they're a reference point for plumbers, so that plumbers aren't turning up to your house and saying, oh, it's an electric shower, it's broken, it needs a new one. It's not the case. They can often be fixed for not a huge amount of money and will go on for many years, and it saves the hassle with tiles and trying to repipe and that sort of thing. So that's kind of why we do them, and well, why we really do them is hopefully from DIY, and plumbers will buy the parts from us. So, Dan also says at the end here, keep up the good work. Well, I hope we can, Dan the Man. That's our intention. Here's rather a long one from AskTheDoc. I hope I've got that right. Yeah, sorry, I was looking. I thought that was another question coming in, but we'll do this AskTheDoc. Hey there, was hoping for a bit of advice. Pretty sure the PRD has gone in our shower, as there is water coming out the bottom of it. It is not a leak though, as it's coming out with a lot of force and draining almost all the water pressure from the shower. Pretty certain he's right that it's not a leak. We have a Triton T70 SI, and it's coming around the middle of the unit rather than where the hose connects. I had a look at your PRD replacement video, top marks, and you replace a part that's connected to the hose, which threw me off a little bit. As I said, the leak isn't coming from the hose, it's coming from the centre of the shower. Does this mean I need a different part? As I'm probably going to do this as a DIY job. Yeah, well, sorry if I'm not reading this very carefully, because I'm reading it sort of for the first time. I'll look at that video again, but I have not yet seen one that comes from a hose. Perhaps you're thinking of the outlet pipe, the bit that goes between the hose and the bottom of the tank, and it's a T70 SI. I think that what you're seeing is that on the outlet pipe of the T70 SI, if I remember correctly, the PRD is a bent piece of pipe. Some of the PRDs come out the bottom of the tank, and some of them are bent, and they're mounted on the outlet pipe. There's one or two Triton ones that have got a bent one that's actually mounted on the side of the heating tank itself. But I think what you may be seeing is a bent, it's like an elephant's trunk type PRD on this. I think on the video we actually mentioned them both, and there's a link to the part number on them both. Once again, that perhaps when Lucas prepares the edited version of this, that he'll manage to put the link to that particular PRD on the bottom of the screen. Now, So, Kim McDonald. The problem I have is the cold pressure is fine. When I turn the dial up to the hot, the flow drops to a trickle. Check the solenoid and it's fine. Any ideas? Well, yeah, Kevin, I think that you may have a faulty element. What's normal, I think I've explained in another video in the past, that when you turn the electricity on, the power on, you turn the shower on, and it doesn't matter whether it's 8, 9 or 10 kilowatts, that the way you get the water hotter is by reducing the flow through the shower. So what happens is, if the water's going through the shower fairly quickly, it doesn't get a chance to heat up. If it goes through the shower fairly slowly, it will heat up and get very hot. Now what can happen is that you may be expecting it to be hotter than it is, but I suspect that what you may have is a faulty element or a faulty micro switch, so that the shower itself is not getting the full power. We've got a couple of videos on how to check micro switches and how to check the elements. So there's generally two, sometimes three, generally two elements inside the shower heating tank. You might find that one of the elements is down, so the shower's working on half power. So what you've got to do is you've got to slow the water down really, really slow to pick up any heat. So really that's probably why it's not working. Jennifer Schuyler. Oh no, missed this one. SH Monks, not really very sure of some of these names, difficult, I can't pronounce them. But let me have a look at this. Yeah, we had clogged pipes and I put, wrong one. Hi, you have some very useful visitors. I have a Myra Event XS that runs too hot. Do you know if there's anything you can adjust to mix the hot and cold? Well, there is a mixing valve inside the XS, but probably the thing to look at with the Myra XS is on the inlets there are two filters. It may be that the filters are blocked, so if there's not enough water getting through the filters, then it's probably not able to balance the water properly, and it may be that that's why it's running hot. It could be the valve itself that's causing the problem. There's two types of mixing valve in there. There's a manual mixing valve and a thermostatic mixing valve. If it's faulty, it's likely to be the thermostatic mixing valve, but whatever you do, the first thing is to check the filters, because that costs you nothing to do that. So it's a little cap, unscrew it, well, turn the water off first obviously, unscrew the cap, and there's two filters inside that they're like little pipes. If they're blocked, that's where your problem is. And now to Jennifer Schuyler. Nothing else coming in the live chat at the moment. Where are we? Yeah. So we had clogged pipes, and I put a PEX in with a hammer in with hammer preventers. All was well for a month, but it now slams inside very loudly, providing hot and cold and no mixing. I installed a new American Standard cartridge, but it's gone back to the same. I think probably it would have been handier if I'd known exactly what type of shower it was. If it was an electric shower, I would suggest that probably it would be a solenoid valve, but not knowing the type of shower, then I'm uncertain. Water hammer's unusual from shower, banging, technical term, water hammer. Water hammer from a shower is unusual, but not impossible, and certainly if you've got something like a solenoid valve that slams shut very quickly, that can cause water hammer. But I'm not sure that the fact that you've said there's an American Standard cartridge suggests to me that it's not. But I'm sorry, you need to get back in touch with us and let us know exactly what type of shower you've got. Then we can maybe take that forward. We've got no more live chats coming in, so there's a few final ones that I'd probably like to lead, and these are more or less thank yous. But so from Nakahara92, she said that we are a life and money saver, and thank you very much. No problem. That's what we do. We try to explain things relatively easily. They're not terribly technical, but try to explain things relatively easy so that people like yourself can fix showers without, or maybe even just not so much always fix them, but save them from having to be stripped out and tiles and be repaired and that sort of thing. And from Els Bells, thank you for the video. I ordered from the website straight after I saw the video. Well, that's what we like to hear. That's the reason for probably doing the videos. Is to, well, we hope to sell parts on the back of our videos. So yeah, thank you, Elsbells. And we have Graham Ball. A very well made video and also very informative. Thanks. Well, a lot of the thanks to these videos goes down to Lucas, who's in the background here and tries to keep me organised, and I know about the pumps, and I really don't know a great deal about pumps and about showers, to be truthful. I'm not quite so hot on when it comes to the technology, but yeah, being in front of the camera really puts a bit of pressure on you. And from Marbells, or Marbase, 1973, very good, straightforward advice, saved me getting out a plumber. Well, I really hope we're not doing too many plumbers out of a job with this, but yeah, I guess that's just what I've said a few minutes ago, that the thing is this hopefully is good for plumbers, so that they've got an idea of what they're going to before they go to a shower, and for DIY to make it easy for them. And finally, Robert Ward says, "You are a legend. Just fixed my dripping shower after nearly smashing it up. Came across the video and now it's all sorted. Top man." Well, you know, I've just got to agree with you there that it's getting kind of comments like that that makes the last 40 years in the plumbing and now fixing showers, it makes it all worthwhile. So thank you, Robert. And really, as there's no more live chats coming in, what we need to do is you give us the thumbs up. I'm getting. I'm going to have to try this. Lucas thinks there's one coming, but I've not. Just give me a moment. Sorry, Lucas, but it's not coming up in this. It's not coming up in this this laptop. I think we're going to have to look at that again. So yeah, I think the thing is, if you're finding these videos useful, then subscribe, and you can give us a thumbs up. And what we're going to do next time, if Lucas can manage to find this question, I'll answer it. But I think, just give me a moment. What we'll do is, I think our next live stream, we've got. Is this the question here? Tim, it's why is air so detrimental to pumps? So yeah, Strider 1 is why is air so detrimental to the pumps? Well, there's a lot of that. There's really a lot of answers to that question. Well, I should say that we're going to be finishing this live chat fairly shortly. So if you want to get a question in, now's the time to do it. I may have to get Lucas to come back again and refresh this laptop, because it clearly isn't refreshing on its own. Anyway, we'll solve that problem for our next live chat. Why is air so detrimental? Well, what happens here is that two things can happen. Is that once some air gets into the pump starts recirculating. I'll move this to the side of it. The pump, whichever one you have, just give me a moment. Whichever one you have, when the air gets in, it starts to recirculate the air. If the water's too hot, it creates a bigger pocket of air inside the pump. And eventually what can happen is that because the pump's full of air, no water gets in. And when no water gets in, it seizes the bearings, because the bearings inside all of these pumps are lubricated by the water that's passing through them. The other problem you can get is with hot water, especially if the water's too hot. About 60 degrees is max for a pump. Maybe take 65, it depends on the manufacturer what they suggest. But when you put hot water into it, I don't know if you think about an electric kettle, when it starts to boil, you see all the bubbles coming out. Well, this is exactly what happens inside the pump. What you're putting is hot water in, and all the bubbles start to form inside. And then what can happen, as I say, is that the water jacket of the pump fills with air, and because it's filled with air, it ruins the bearings. And some pumps are sturdier than others. Will take a bit of abuse, but what then starts happening is it starts making the taps or the shower cough and splutter, so you don't get a steady stream from them. So it's quite important. I didn't intentionally go into how some of these should be fitted. Each manufacturer has a different set of instructions for fitting their pump. They're not terribly different, but But the truth is you need to read the instructions, and you need to read the instructions carefully. It's so easy just to think, oh, this will be okay or that will be okay. It is not okay, because if it's not installed correctly, the manufacturers won't honour their guarantee. They're generally, all of the manufacturers that we do are generally pretty good at replacing the parts if they have something that goes wrong. And in fact, some of the manufacturers that would demand to have the parts back, and they are really, really careful as to how they go over the units to double check where any fault has arisen. But if it's not installed according to their instructions, then they're just not interested. I mean, you're having to replace sometimes £300 or £400 worth of equipment, and I guess like everybody else, they're not going to do that unless they know that it's their product that's failed, not the way it's been installed. So yeah, that air can be a problem, and not only in the pump, it's the installation that many plumbers just connect the pipework straight into the copper tank. Well, they need to use a thing like a Yorkshire flange. Yorkshire flange. A Yorkshire flange when they're connecting into the tank, or connecting to the side of the hot water tank. So be careful. Make sure you read the instructions before you install the pump, because it could be an expensive business. And yeah, I guess that's it. So I'm just going to draw this to a close now, as there's no more questions come in. I'm just checking with Lucas. Yeah, there's nothing come in, because as I say, we'll need to have a look at this laptop before we do the next live stream. And I think the next live stream, what I'd like to do is to, I'll move things around again just before we finish, is to go over the sort of workings of an electric shower, to explain how the water comes in, it gets circulated, and how it goes through the and how the electricity goes through the pump, and how the whole thing works. So that'll be a few weeks away. What you can do is, we're also working on a video to explain much better how these electric pumps work, and the situations you should use them, what type of pumps to use where. But it's a fairly complicated, it's going to be a fairly complicated video. We're going to have to split it into a few different parts. But keep your eye out for that. We've got a lot of the work done towards it, but we're going to have to shoot it in 2 or 3 different bits to make sure the whole thing will work and it will gel together. So I think that's about it. All I can say is thank you for watching. If you like these videos, subscribe. Come back the next time we're doing a live stream. Watch on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll advertise then when it's likely to be. It's not something we can do every week. It takes time to set all this stuff up. A bit of thinking's involved as well. So yeah, so give us a thumbs up, like us, or do whatever, but and subscribe, and come back and join us the next time. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time.